when you grow up? A question we have all been asked and probably have asked of others at one time or another. But is it the right question to deliver the answer you're truly looking for? Like so many things in life, if you ask the wrong question, you're not likely to get the correct answer. My name is Audy Perry. I'm the executive director of the Heritage Farm Foundation here in Huntington, West Virginia, where we strive to celebrate the ingenuity and adventure of Appalachia through the education of the next generation. The theme for today is complexities of identity. And for us at Heritage Farm, exploring the identities of Appalachia is truly complex. But tonight, I thought we would explore one aspect that strikes me as pivotal for our future. And that is, who is educated? What is an education? We want education to be important, but so often we kill our progress with a suicide. Don't look it up, I just made it up. What I mean is, when we assume that someone is less intelligent, less valuable, less creative, because they have less, we miss out on the value of others. My example came when I was 14 years old. I was in high school taking all the fancy classes, chemistry, algebra, all those things. And today I have little letters after my name, so the world would deem me to be educated. But on that certain day, almost 40 years ago, my dad had sent me up the hill to help an elderly gentleman bale hay. Anybody baled hay? Hard work, right? Well, the gentleman was in his 70s. He was permanently bent over because of a life of hard work. He had probably never gone to school more than maybe the 8th grade in that one-room schoolhouse that's now part of the Farm Museum. And he never went anywhere more than the contiguous counties in his entire life. And so the world might have deemed him to be uneducated. Now, I know how to use a lot of things. I can use a cell phone, I can use a computer, I can drive an automobile. But honestly, I don't comprehend how any of those things work. I couldn't repair my car if the world depended on it. But I am educated. On that day back in 1985, I discovered my neighbor was far more educated than me in the world in which he lived. Not only was he strong, but he was brilliant. He knew where all of his food came from because he grew it. He knew how to repair or fix every machine on his property, including the tractor. He even knew which tree was better for a fence post versus a table leg. Now, many years prior, if someone had asked him, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" he may have said a dairy farmer. But if you had asked him what problems were important for him to be able to solve, he may have said more specific things like how to feed my family, how to fix my tractor, how to make the kitchen table with my own 2 hands. You see what I'm saying? Now, this is not to say that there aren't amazing people with little letters after their name, right? You're valuable too. But unfortunately, what seems to happen more often than it should, which is never, is one group assumes the other group has nothing to offer. And then this group assumes that this group will just take advantage of them. So we never share. But when these two groups combine to problem solve, amazing things happen. And so I would just like to share a few things we have learned along the way at Heritage Farm and kind of explore the thought of how together we can problem solve not only the complexities of identity here in Appalachia, but how that folds out into the world in which we live today. So if you think about it, the basis of all education is problem solving. Every time we seek to learn more about the world, ourselves, or others, whether through disciplines of science, literature, art, mathematics, social studies, we're trying to solve a problem. And the great thing for Appalachia is we have a heritage of problem solving. Somebody in your family was amazing. That family tree, go look. Somebody in your family built their own home, grew their own food, made their own clothes, and were able to protect their family against everything that came against them. Or else you and I wouldn't even be here. Amazing heritage of problem solving. You look at what someone in your family overcame to make your life today possible. We ought to be the most problem-solving people on the planet based on our heritage. Now, we can talk about those identities that may have gone awry in the past and why we aren't necessarily considered to be educated here in Appalachia. But that identity is not what is true. An example of this is going back to the question of, what do you want to be when you grow up? By the direction of the question, we're perhaps inadvertently boxing people into predetermined routes of making a living, as opposed to what more likely be what they were created to accomplish. To get to the heart of one's identity, I propose a better question: is what problem do you want to solve? You may still get to the same occupation or calling in life, but you arrive with a far more focused purpose and meaning rather than just a way to make a living. What do you want to be when you grow up will lead you to an answer, but what problem do you want to solve will lead you to a pathway. Asking a child, what do you want to be when you grow up, is honestly cruel. Think about it. You have no idea what jobs there's going to be 15 years from now. So neither do they. But I guarantee you, there will always be problems to solve. When you find the answer to what problem you want to solve, it is usually a beautiful marriage between something you're good at and something that you're passionate about. So if you get to spend every day doing something you're good at and passionate about, that's going to be a pretty amazing journey, my friend. Not only for you, but for the community around you. I started asking this question a few years ago. The first time I asked this question was to a 4th grade class from rural Appalachia. At the time I asked this question, there were no public buildings remaining in the town from this, other than this lone elementary school. Coal jobs, gone. Trucking companies, gone. Corner store, grocery stores, gas stations, nothing. So good test for my question, right? Because if hope hasn't died in this community, none of us have an excuse. At the end of our problem-solving tour there at Heritage Farm, I asked them, So what problem do you want to solve? And a little girl's hand went right up, which is really rare, I have since learned, because we don't have this conversation very often yet. So I said, yes, ma'am. What problem would you like to solve? And she said, I want to figure out how to make my grandma's hands to stop shaking. Wow. Now there's a girl you want to follow, right? Her teacher's looking at me, I'm looking at her, we're like, wow, this is amazing. And we're pouring into her about how it's incredible to know what problem you want to solve, because the whole education system now works for you, because now she can know that she needs to study the human body and disease, and we're going on, and she says, yeah. And she points to the other kids in the class, she goes, and you guys got to tell Grandma I'm coming. I was like, this girl's got it all, marketing, PR. Amazing. And you know the best part was, because she was bold enough to say what problem she wanted to solve, it emboldened the other children, right, to begin to speak out what they may be interested in solving. We finished that great conversation. We're walking out the door. The last two people are this little girl and her teacher. And so I kneeled down and I said, Jennifer, I really look forward to the world you're going to create. And she said, thank you, Mr. Perry. What problem are you going to solve? I'd been dishing it out. I hadn't even thought of my answer, right? But out of my mouth came, I want to eradicate poverty in Wayne County. And she said, good, you do that. And out she walked the door. So here in the heart of Appalachia, we are often confronted with the assumed identities of the perceived have and have-nots, or the perceived educated and uneducated. But in reality, we have an incredible heritage of ingenuity, perseverance, and problem-solving among all of our people. The education we need is based upon the problems to be solved. We must refocus our combined efforts to leverage the amazing abilities within our neighbors, regardless of their background or surroundings. So, as we sit here in this auditorium, maybe you're watching in an undergraduate classroom, your corporate office, your job site, your farm, your couch. What problem do you want to solve? Thank you.